Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast. That must mean it's time for your weekly Calamity Jane live stream, and this is 2 weeks in a row running. So I'm gonna say maybe we're like back in. We're back into the groove again. You know what I'm saying?
I think so, but for in animation world, there's a thing we have rules of threes. So
We've gotten
I'll feel
two.
better.
We've gotten
Yeah, we
two.
got two. So I'm glad you're optimistic, but for me, I'm just gonna be a classic. I'm gonna follow the classic rule and see if we can get it to three
All
by
right.
next week.
All
We'll
right.
see.
All right. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I will be optimistic, even though that's not generally the role that I take. But otherwise, how are you doing, James?
I'm doing okay. I've been as I've told you before, I've been kind of battling being sick and been kind of floating in and out. And then today I've kind of got a little bit of a cough back again. It's like it never wants to go away fully. It's really annoying,
Hmm.
but it's good. So, anyways, apologies in advance if I have to kind of mute and cough a little bit, but so far so good.
All right.
So
Well,
I'm optimistic about that.
we will manage. Well, that was a quick intro. Not a lot of like banter right at the top. But why don't we go ahead and launch into what you think you're going to be working on today?
Yeah, let me see here. I'll share screen. All right. So as we last left off from last week, I did this pose here with Calamity. Let me turn on the storyboards real quick. So we did this pose here.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to do this pose now next,
Okay.
where she falls into that pose. So I'll be working on these looks like about two poses or so tonight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Doing that. So that's the plan. Yeah. So I just got to figure I might as well just kind of block out the whole scene with whatever poses we need for this particular shot. So yeah. So I'm just gonna start assembling some stuff as we go. So this
Okay.
particular pose here, like it's not much of a difference than this one. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just the
Mm-hmm.
hoodie is off, so that's gonna be pretty easy to do. But I'll pick an easy shot to start off with, as we go. But yeah.
All right. Sounds good to me. I think that's the way to do it. Save all the hard stuff for last.
Yeah, yeah, why not, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Um,
So, what's been going on in your neck of the woods?
Not too
You've been,
much. I went and so I mean we didn't get a chance to talk about the movies that I've seen recently.
mhm.
We got really mired in fighting games last weekend. It was a real geek deep dive on that one. But
Yeah.
the last couple of weeks I did see Wes Anderson's new film, Asteroid City. I don't know why I keep trying to say Android City. Asteroid City. And then I saw the newest Mission Impossible movie.
Mhm.
Both of which were really good. Really enjoyed both of them for obviously very, very different reasons. But they were both a lot of fun. Well, I mean, fun definitely for Mission Impossible. Interesting and entertaining, I think, more generally for Asteroid City. I mean, it's a really great movie, and I was talking to a couple of friends, and I think I've come full circle on Wes Anderson a little bit because
Mhm.
there was a large period of time where his aesthetic kind of more annoyed me than anything else. But in recent years, it has matured. I believe even on this podcast, I spoke at length about the French Dispatch,
Mhm.
and how it kind of, to a certain extent, it was an evolution of his style. And my concern with Asteroid City, just based on the trailers, was that it was almost like Wes Anderson doing a parody of Wes Anderson. Like almost
Mhm.
he got cold feet from his departure with the French Dispatch. I mean, don't get me wrong, the French Dispatch, you watch it and you're like, oh, this is a Wes Anderson movie, right? There's no ambiguity there, but it definitely felt like an evolution of his style. It felt different in ways that his other movies hadn't felt. But and so I was afraid that Asteroid City was sort of a backslide into sort of a more safe territory, but it really wasn't. What it was kind of a parody on his style, but it was a parody with intention, right?
Mhm.
And I don't want to go too much into it. I mean, there's not really a huge amount of spoilers in a Wes Anderson movie. They're not his movies aren't about twists, right? They're
Yeah.
they're ruminations on humanity in a lot of ways, and the nature of. In this one in particular, it was the nature of the overwhelming themes, and I've been, and this is the sign that I really liked it, is since I've seen it, I spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Broadly, to me, I mean, this is my interpretation. Broadly, it is a movie about loss, about deep love, about grief, about losing your place in the world. When I finished watching the movie, I felt deeply sad. I felt very sad, because that is the impression that the film gave me at the end. Maybe sad is too strong a word. I felt melancholy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no question, in my mind at least, that is what he was overall trying to evoke with that film. And it isn't a spoiler because it is the first scene in the movie, but Asteroid City is a television show about the writing of a play, and then the play is the actual movie. So it's like the Grand Budapest Hotel, how it's a flashback within a flashback within a flashback within a flashback.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or I guess there's 3 flashbacks. Asteroid City is meta in that way. So it opens with Bryan Cranston as a Rod Serling-esque figure talking about a very famous playwright who wrote a play that we then watch. And it jumps up various levels from time to time, from the play, the movie, which is in color, which is the play, then the TV show, which is black and white and filmed very Twilight Zone-ish, but on a stage, and then all the way up to the Bryan Cranston narration component of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I won't say more than that, but it is, because of that, the very, very hyper stylized, hyper unrealistic nature of the visuals and the cinematography, it makes sense because it is this sort of copy of a copy of a copy kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very intentional, and so I really liked that. Actually, I thought that was really great. I mean, and I thought it worked well. With Grand Budapest Hotel, right? The reason he did it in so many flashbacks is to almost to say, this is like a Homerian Odyssey that's just told over time, and the truth of the actual story is completely lost to the actual truth of the original narrative is lost to time, right? Because F. Murray Abraham's character is recounting his experiences of Ralph Fiennes' character, and then he grows up and he writes a book about his memory, right? Or no, Jude Law is listening to him tell the story, and then Jude Law, as an old man, writes the book about listening to F. Murray Abraham talk about his memories, and then we see it. It's a young woman who is, visiting the elder version of Jude Law's character, his memorial, and reading the book that he wrote, yada yada yada. So it's very much like he's divorcing it over and over and over again to give the sense that the real truth is obviously obscured through time, and what you watch is an interpretation of that, right? It's funny. I had never actually seen the Grand Budapest Hotel because I disliked Moonlight Kingdom so much that I'm like, well, I am super done with Wes Anderson.
Wait. Pause for a second here. You said Moonlight Kingdom. That's a name I don't think I've ever heard.
Yeah. That's with Bruce Willis and Ed Norton. It's the one about young love, and it's actually kind of creepy because the kids are teenagers and they're not technically of age by our cultural standards, but because the movie is taking place when it does take place, like it wouldn't have been culturally inappropriate for kids that young to get it on. But it's basically about it's basically about a summer camp and just the antics that occur there.
Huh.
But that one is sort of almost just. I haven't seen it for years, but my memory of it is it was almost just, it was told like a parable or a fable or a fairy tale even. So, but yeah, I mean, like, I really liked The Life Aquatic, but I felt like it was about the limits of what I could tolerate with his aesthetic at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then Moonrise Kingdom,
Okay.
Came out, and I'm like, yeah, he's just a one note, right? Because Moonrise Kingdom didn't feel like an evolution. It didn't feel like he changed at all. It felt like it felt very static to me. And then I sort of fell off after that. And then I mean, I still haven't seen Isle of Dogs or Fantastic Mr. Fox, which I need to go back and watch. At this point. But then, then The French Dispatch came out last year, and it was, I mean, I was blown away, right? Like, I go to movies when I'm bored, and it was the only thing playing. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go watch The French Dispatch. And was absolutely blown away. Couldn't believe how much I liked it. Couldn't believe how different it felt to my last experience of him, which isn't surprising. I mean, Moonrise Kingdom came out a million years ago. Not a million, but... 2012. So it came out a decade ago. So a long time ago, and I guess I kind of written him off and didn't really consider, obviously, that as a filmmaker, his voice will change. He will fine tune things. He'll grow as an artist, and so I don't know why I was so surprised, because then after I went and saw Asteroid City, I immediately went home, and it just so happened that Grand Budapest Hotel was streaming on Hulu, so I watched that as well. And I really, really dug it. So I feel like I've come, to a certain extent, full circle on Wes Anderson. And it's more, I think I've grown up. And I think that I'm starting to understand a little bit of where he's coming from in terms of how he presents stuff. I also like how practical his stuff is.
He's not doing much stuff with fancy special effects or anything like that. Everything's kind of a physical set that they're interacting with, right? He doesn't do much green screen too, does he? He
does do compositing. There's this really funny Roadrunner character in Asteroid City, and the whole thing was done as a puppet, but it's a guy in a full suit walking around with the puppet, and then they just composited him out, right?
Okay.
But it's okay. I mean, like, it looks great in the movie, so it's not a complaint. But he's not above CG, and I don't think you should be above CG. I think that's ridiculous to like.
Yeah, I mean, you should choose any technology you can.
Yeah, absolutely, but use it to its most effectiveness, right? And he does. He uses it really well. So anyway, Asteroid City was great. I really, really dug it. There are still elements of it that I'm trying to parse and understand the context of, which I don't, I don't want to like spoil anything here. But the overarching themes that I got were the nature of grief, the nature of coping with loss, and the nature of losing a love. And I can deeply empathize with all of those. All of those emotions. So I really, really enjoyed it. And then
it's a sign of a good film if it has resonance in it, and you're thinking about it days after you've seen it. That's
absolutely.
That means that Wes Anderson did his job. He's successful. He should be, so that's great in that regard that you're thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the complete, absolute other side of the spectrum, as far as you can get on the other side, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, Part 1, which I thoroughly enjoyed as well. But it is as different a film as you can get and still technically be a movie. Obviously, it's the penultimate Mission Impossible movie, Tom Cruise's passion project since 1998, since the first one came out. I mean, he's very public about how much he loves the Ethan Hunt character and how much fun he has making the movies. It's a franchise that wouldn't exist were it not for Tom Cruise's just love of the property, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I
Yeah.
appreciate. I mean, I appreciate that that he is using his power to like create fun movies, and he has a crew of people that he works with, and he's using his passion to make fun stuff, and I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
It is a script. In terms of like the story, I think part of it is because it was a movie. It was basically a 5 hour, maybe even a 6 hour long movie broken into two parts, because it's long. It's 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And while I wasn't at any point, like when I was watching Avatar 2, after about 90 minutes, I'm like, oh my God, when is this movie going to end? Like I was on the verge of scooping my eyes out. I hated that movie so much. It was so awful.
Mm-hmm.
And I never felt that way. I mean, Dead Reckoning's fun. It's a great action movie. I mean, we've talked about this. Without a doubt, Tom Cruise, in my opinion, is maybe the last great action star.
Yeah, he could be.
And
yeah, I'm trying to think. There's nobody else really. He's kind of like the last of that era for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
and what's funny is he's worn so many different hats, like romantic interest, and just serious drama guy, action guy. He's done everything.
He really has. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
But,
he's not like. Is he like an Anthony Hopkins or a Marlon Brando or something? Like, no, he's not. But what he is just he's a talented guy. I mean, he knows his strengths and he plays to those strengths, and like that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. I love. I'm not speaking about the man personally. I don't know what his personal life is. I know that he's a religious freak, right? And that's fine. I have a problem with religion in general, but at the end of the day, in this current phase of his life, he seems to be pushing his religiosity to the background, and that's great. As long as you're not shoving it in my face and you're not hurting anybody else. Although that's debatable in Scientology. But honestly, they're not as bad as the Catholic Church, so it's sort of like, I don't know, like where, everybody's so fine with like God or Jesus and all that. So, I mean, Scientologists have done awful stuff, but so have Christians, right? So I don't know, but anyway, he doesn't really bring it up anymore. It's become sort of a background, element of his public persona, and that's great. I appreciate that, and he is openly acknowledges that he's a difficult guy to work with. That you either get on his train or you go work on another project, and I actually appreciate that too, right? He doesn't sit there and try to deny the reality of how he works,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that. His professional persona I actually really like, and he and it shows in the Mission Impossible movies. His professionalism, his way of getting these movies done, is the reason why there are going to ultimately be 8 movies in this franchise, right?
What? There's gonna be 8 of them?
Well, yeah, this one, the one that was in theaters was 7. The last one next year will be the 8th one.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I wasn't even paying attention like on the numbers like that, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, so that's and we're going on over 20 years now, right? Well, almost 20 years worth.
Yeah.
When he started, right?
It's over in 2008, 2018. It'll be 25 years almost since it all started. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty trippy.
But in any case, it's totally different. I left with my heart pounding a little bit. The final train action sequence is phenomenal. It's so good. I mean, I was riveted. The action was so well done, and Haley Atwell is the new female lead because he tends to change it every movie because it is Tom Cruise after all.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, I love Haley Atwell. Like if she showed
You
up at
developed a crush, huh?
long time ago. I've had a crush on her since I saw her as I mean, like I knew she was Agent Carter from the first Captain America movie, but then when they did that short-lived Agent Carter show
Hmm.
on
You watched every
ABC,
episode.
I loved that show, and I just absolutely fell in love with her in that
That's
show.
so
Just
funny.
absolutely, she's a great presence. Why
Uh
she's
huh.
not a bigger movie star is beyond me. She's a great actor, phenomenal comic timing,
Uh huh.
absolutely
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful women in Hollywood right
Sure.
now. And she's great. I mean, like, you have to do a lot of work to share a lead role with Tom Cruise because the man bleeds charisma, right? I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
he just stands on screen and you're like, oh my God, I want to be this human being, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And the fact that she can come on and hold her own next to him is amazing. She's great. Her character is well written. She's super fun. She can keep up with Tom Cruise because she does a lot of the stunts with him, right?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and so she's great. She's a great co-lead. I mean, he does a really good job. When he started getting total creative control over the movies, he does a really good job of finding actors that play well with him. You know, I mean, I think he saw that right away with Ving Rhames and Luther Stickler from who's been in basically every movie since the very beginning.
Hmm.
I think he only has a very small role or isn't in Ghost Protocol. I'm actually going through and rewatching him right now, and Ghost Protocol is the one I'm gonna watch next. But
Hmm.
anyway, but he's in all of them. And then when Simon Pegg showed up in J.J. Abrams' third movie, like Cruise, like I like this guy. He brings him back for all of the other ones, right?
Uh huh. Yeah.
So he finds a stable of people that he likes working with and keeps them around, and that's fun too. But anyway, it was like the story is pretty thin. The dialogue is not great, and in fact, it's pretty exposition heavy. There's not a lot of real character building. There's not a lot of real
Hmm.
growth of anybody. It's just a lot of pipe laying. And my hope is that they kind of get it. They've gotten it all out of the way with this first one, and
Hmm.
then when the second one comes out, it'll just be 2.5 hours of action montages, kind of like the way John Wick 4 was, right?
Hmm.
There was no more characters that needed to be created. There was no more growth that needed to be told. This was just John Wick's coda, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Hmm.
John Wick 4 was like almost a 3 hour long action sequence, which was just awesome. I saw it in theaters twice. I liked it so
Yeah.
much.
It's so good. I mean,
Um,
and again, in the pantheon of action movies, to me, that's still number one
it's
for all
if
time
if it's not
great
the best,
action movies.
it's one of the best. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So now a lot of people are saying that this one, this Mission Impossible is up there, is a really
It's really
highly
fun.
touted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Would you put it with John Wick 4 though?
No, I don't think it touches John Wick 4. I mean
Okay.
the
Yeah.
thing is the Mission Impossible movies, because he insists, which I think is brilliant by the way. He insists that they stay PG-13.
Uh-huh.
Um they are limited because of the rating to a certain extent and kind of the stuff
Yeah.
that they can do from an action standpoint. The body count has to be a little bit lower. The dialogue has to be it'll be a little bit less natural because human beings, as a general rule, curse. They tend to get pretty blue, and so there's very
Yeah.
little cursing. And so sometimes, in a moment where someone is going to say shit, they say crap, and you're like, that's not how you would say that, And so
Yeah.
sometimes it
Yeah.
comes through. Um, but it's super fun. I mean the train sequence in particular was amazing, and the car chase in Venice may be one of my favorite car chases. It wasn't the most like heart pounding. It wasn't the most intense car chase I've ever seen. It wasn't like Ronin, right? Like the car chases in Ronin were unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
The car chase, my favorite in terms of like just raw action. One of my favorite car chases of all time, and it wasn't even in a movie I particularly liked that much, was on Her Majesty's Secret Service. There's a car chase in like the Swiss Alps or somewhere, and they are
Uh-huh.
just sliding around ice, bouncing off walls of ice and it's just amazing. Oh, it's just one of the best choreographed and shot car chases I've ever seen, and The French Connection is good until you realize that the whole thing is been fast forwarded, and so everything is actually like everything was filmed at like 15 miles an hour, and then
Oh,
they
and it just
doubled the speed to make it look like they were tearing through. I think it was
uh-huh.
Chicago or New York at like 30 miles an hour under the L.
Hmm.
But that's okay. It was still a good car chase. Anyway,
And
you know, the
for his
bullet
time,
and yeah,
and for the
yeah,
time, I mean, the audience wasn't sophisticated enough to know that, and so they were just interpreting what they see on the screen. So it's a pretty genius move.
yeah.
Who was director for French Connection? I can't remember who.
It was
Um,
what is his name? I'm just angry. I'm just gonna look it up.
Anyways, credit to him. I mean,
Yeah,
for directing that film and
William
and
Friedkin.
doing
William
that.
Friedkin. That's who it was.
Okay.
Um, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it was a good way of handling the situation. I think you couldn't do it in exactly the same way. Audiences are way too savvy now about
Yeah.
that kind of
Yep.
cinematic trickery.
Yep.
But yeah, I agree. In the moment, I think it worked really well. But anyway, it's not like the most heart pounding. It's not the most intense car chase I've ever seen. But what it does is crazy to me. It's both thrilling. It is thrilling. It's not boring by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also funny. Like it's
Hmm.
genuinely humorous, not in an unintentional way. There's all these funny beats that they hit over the course of the car chase that it's just like one moment you're in a tense situation and the next moment you're chuckling at something that Tom Cruise is saying or doing or Haley Atwell is saying or doing, and it's just like it was such a unique way to do a car chase, and I really really loved it. I mean, it was one of my favorites. Not again, not because of just the intensity of it, but
Hmm.
the way that they handled the emotions of it is what was so
Hmm.
thrilling to me.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So I mean, really dug it. Yeah, I really liked the movie a lot.
So you have high hopes for the rest of the remaining, I guess, two more that are left. Then, right? I
Well, no,
mean,
just the one more. So this was the
just one
seventh
more.
one, and then Dead
Okay.
Reckoning Part Two, which comes out like a year from now.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I thought this is one story, and they're gonna do like two more types,
oh
like
no,
another
yeah.
story type thing.
To my
They had something
knowledge,
else planned.
yeah, to my knowledge, Dead Reckoning Part Two is a swan song for the franchise.
Okay. Okay. All right. Hmm.
Yeah, so I can't imagine it not being good, um, because at this point they've got all the story out of the way. There's no more story to tell. We know who the bad guy is. We know what the bad guy wants. Um, we know where Ethan Hunt's character stands. We know where everybody is currently at. And so now it's just a matter of now that all those pieces are in place, just letting it play out, right?
Hmm.
So I think I think Dead Reckoning Part Two is going to be really good. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Is it already? Have they already shot any parts of it, or are they just gonna?
I don't honestly know off the top of my head.
Sometimes they.
The fact that it's coming
Yeah.
out next year says to me that at the very least
Yeah.
principal photography is done,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And they might do some reshoots, but that seems unlikely at this point because they've got to be so deep in post production on that if they're going to get it out by next year. So
Hmm.
that's that's my 2 cents.
Hmm. Well, I wish I could say I saw something this weekend, but I didn't. I have not really been. I have not been in the movie since Spider-Man. I'm trying to think. The last movie besides that, Spider-Man was great. I liked it a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I don't know if we talked about it on the stream or not, but I mean, we kind of went back and forth. I know you loved second one, and I was a little bit more neutral towards second one. I liked the first one, but they're both great. I mean, you can't go wrong with either of them. They're
Mm-hmm.
both terrific movies. I just happen to like the first one better, but yeah. But as far as movies are concerned, I stayed away from Dial of Destiny with how bad it's getting
Yeah.
reviewed and how little of an interest I have in it as a movie. So stayed away from that, and there's nothing else really out. I'm trying to think of. I did see I was telling you about. I was raving about this over the weekend to you about Nimona on Netflix. I thought that was a
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
terrific animated film. So that's worth a watch at least at some point. I would recommend it to our tens of viewers if they want to look if they're looking for something to watch animated wise. It's really good. Um, but yeah, I don't have anything. I can't think of anything else that I've been really paying too much attention to. My time's been with mainly playing Pokemon Unite and Persona 5. I picked up Persona 5,
Oh,
and
oh.
I've got to say, I don't know if you played Persona 5, have
Never
you?
played any of the Persona franchise.
So Persona 5 as a JRPG, it's the most slickest packaged JRPG I think I've ever played, and I'm only 2 hours into it, and
Wow.
it's a joy to play. It's like it's taken such an old set of rules for JRPG and just kind of and it's all about the sizzle and the flash of the packaging that goes into telling it
Hmm.
and delivering it to you. Because in the core, the actual engine of the game itself is pretty standard, but you're looking at the UI and you're looking at how they present stuff to you, and it is I'm actually pretty impressed. And considering how old that game is, I think it came out on the PlayStation 3 originally. I think I don't recall, but it's an older game. But
5 release date. The original came out in
yeah,
2016, so yeah, it's got some gray hairs.
yeah, but it's already like 2 hours in. I'm really impressed with it. The voice acting's good. And again, this is the same issue I think I have with all RPGs and JRPGs. You'll get like voice acting for some stuff, and also then they won't say anything for the
Hmm.
next few bars. Then they start talking again. I just was like, man, I know there's a lot of work that goes into getting voice actors to do their lines, but man, if they only could just keep that going and not break the immersion, I
Yeah,
wish,
the cadence is yeah. It's they need to spend more time on it. This is a complaint that I have with honestly most video games that aren't filmed like a movie on a soundstage with all the actors standing next to them, right? I mean, a lot of video games, most video games, I would even venture to guess, they do, especially Japanese ones, they'll do mocap, but it's all just the physical mocap, and then they
hmm
have voice actors do the voices, and they read the voices. They do all of the lines, and then they have a dialogue system in the game engine that adds the lines in on a queuing system, right?
hmm
And you can, this is something I encountered back when I worked on Infamous 2 because I did all the, not the coding, but I used the tool that a programmer had written to put in
hmm
all the lines of dialogue and set up all the VO and stuff. And you can set like pauses between when one line of dialogue is played and another line of dialogue is played. And I don't know if it's a limitation of technology or what, but even when you set the time delay to 0, right, in
hmm
that game, when one character had to cut off another character, it never really worked that well, right? Like the
hmm
one character would be cut off, but then there was like 3 or 4 frames before the other character would interject, and that break in the momentum, that break in the cadence of the speech is very, very noticeable,
hmm
especially for fluent speakers, because it's just we do this. I mean, what is it? The average human says something like 25,000 words a day or something insane like that.
mm
I know I don't because I work at home, and then I mean when we're talking, I think I
We
get
kind of
all of my words in for the
get our reps
week,
in, right?
but yeah,
Yeah.
but otherwise, anyway, there's just something about the way that the dialogue is implemented when you're not, because with the cutscenes weren't, with the actual pre-rendered cuts, not pre-rendered, but the actual cutscenes, which we shot on the mocap stage, the audio files weren't broken up into discrete lines of dialogue. They were just a single block of audio that went along with the captured animation data, right?
hmm
And so
hmm
in those moments when they're actually in a fully fledged out non-interactive cutscene, everything sounds perfectly because the actors are playing next to each other, and you're not queuing up one sound file and then playing the next sound file. It's all one thing, right? It's all
hmm hmm
holistic. Um, but then when you go to like the in-game ones where you're like doing side quests and whatnot, then you really notice the break in the cadence between one line of dialogue playing and then the next line of dialogue playing and then the next one and then the next one, and it feels mechanical. It feels unnatural.
Yeah. That's not a gripe that's unique to Persona 5.
No.
Persona 5 Royal is what I'm playing. All games suffer from this for the most part. I'm trying to think of any that had it all the way through that actually worked, but you always find a little bit of a hiccup with that, but
yeah, I mean, even like say the new modern like God of War games, Kratos and his idiot son.
Idiot son, man.
They just don't shut up. I hate that character. I can't.
I will say, you know what though? You're bringing up a good point though. But God of War actually does a good job of letting they do speak all of their lines. I think in the game. I think there's not one moment where you just see a bunch of text and then Kratos is just sitting there idling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But the thing is, what I have noticed though is all the incidental dialogue, as they say, as you're walking around the environment.
Yeah.
That still has that cadence problem.
Yep, it does. Yeah, and sometimes I think it's in God of War, the first one, where they'll speak over each other. You don't catch one of the lines, you catch another line.
Yeah,
instead,
because you've actually triggered
you trigger something else.
Right, and then it's like that breaks the immersion too.
Yeah, that does too.
if Atreus would just shut up for 5 seconds. I swear
kid.
I only played the game for like
rough.
2 hours, and I still haven't gotten back to it because A, the difficulty was like, I don't want to get good enough at this, and 2, that character in 2 hours, I hated him.
Sure.
I wanted him to die so bad, and yet I know that he doesn't. Doesn't.
Well, yeah. Now, the reason why you started playing is because I was almost insisting you play it because of the sound design for that game.
Yes, and it is impeccable. It is.
Yeah, it is the best sound design game, and Ragnarok's right there with it. The best sound design game I've ever played, especially if you have your headphones on or if you have a surround system
I got a nice 5.1. Yeah.
Then you have to play it for that reason alone. And then we've already went over this too. Just set it to easy, and then you're good. And then you can just go through it. But then you can just enjoy the sound. You can actually just play it for the sound, and then you'll see what I mean, like how rich the sound designers of that game really they outdid themselves with that game. I was so impressed with that game for that reason alone.
Well, I was going to go back to it. Like that was the next thing I was going to attempt, and then Street Fighter 6 came out, and I fell in love with this silly Pokemon RPG mode, and so that's kind of like the only thing I've been playing recently, at least.
Yeah, I was going to ask about this because I have yet to have played a Pokemon game, a classic, typical Pokemon game, at all the way through. I played maybe 5 minutes and got my first Pokemon, whether it's Pikachu or Squirtle or whatever. Then I get bored, I stop. So when you say Pokemon RPG and then you're applying it to Street Fighter 6, you lose me a little bit because I can't find the connection. Like, what is it that you're meaning by that?
Okay, well, first off, it is obviously way more fast paced than Pokemon is. Pokemon is slow even by RPG standards. But what I mean is there's two aspects that it make it reminiscent of Pokemon to me. One, you can basically go up to anybody in the world, not everybody, but most characters in the world, and go, I want to fight you, and then you fight. No one ever says, I don't want to do that. No thanks. No. It doesn't matter. If it's an old woman, if it's a cop, if it's a juggler who's juggling flaming sticks, if it's a thug with a cardboard box on his head for some reason. And there's two evil factions. There's the Crows and Mad Gear. You can basically walk up to anybody and fight them. And that's hilarious. And it's just like Pokemon. It's this entire society around fighting these monsters, right? In Street Fighter 6, it's a culture of everybody just wants to test their mettle in a feat of physical strength, right? So that's the one thing. And then the second thing is the collection aspect of it. So in Pokemon, this goes without saying, but the main thrust of the game is to collect all the monsters. Gotta catch them all, right? As the slogan used to be. In Street Fighter 6, it's similar. So you don't play as like Ryu, you don't play as Cammy or Luke or Manon or whoever all the new characters are. You play as this avatar that you create yourself, right? And it's a remarkably robust avatar creator. But then, as you play the game, you meet all of the characters from the game.
Yeah.
And you become their student. And they're sort of like gym masters, in a sense. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gym leaders or gym... whatever. I don't remember. The leaders of the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And you, as you rank up as their student, they award you with more and more of their moves from their moveset. Mm-hmm. And you can also change which fighting stance, which style to go with from them. And so you can do Chun-Li's style, you can do Luke's style, you can do Ryu's style. And when you change that, it changes all of your animation. So you animate like that character who is your teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there's this massive collection component behind it, ranking up Manon's style so you can unlock more of her moves, thereby adding yet another potential move to your repertoire, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also similar to Pokemon, you can't have all of your Pokemon go with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a limit. You can only have a limited set of moves attached to your character, and so like you can have 1 quarter circle forward attack move, 1 quarter circle back attack move. You can do a half circle move. You can do aerial moves, but you only get 1 each, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you can't do a Yoga Fire and a and like Manon is a character I use a lot, and she's got like the swinging kick, right?
Yeah.
Yoga Fire's quarter circle punch, and Manon's swinging kick is quarter circle kick. You can only do you can only do one of those. You can't pick both of them, right? And so
even though they're attributed to different fight and a kick and a punch button.
But it's intentional. They want you to think about strategy. They want you to think about having to it's a trade-off thing, right? It's sacrificing one thing to the next to try to create some interest, right? To force you to or hopefully encourage you to think about actually building a character that is all your own, right? And it's really clever. It's just so clever. And then as you work through that story mode, you can take the character that you're building or your team, right, like Pokemon, and you can take that online and battle your avatar against other players' avatars. So, and that's why I say it's like a Pokemon-style RPG, because of those two core, the parallels in those two core systems, right? Being able to fight basically anybody, and then you create your team, so to speak, but with moves that you are building presumably strategically, right? But yeah, so it's super cool, super fun. Yeah, so once I pick that up, so I'll probably, whenever I finally get bored of Street Fighter 6, I'll probably go back and finally get around to God of War. Boy. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then just put it to easy, and then just go through it.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw a little blurb somebody called a God of Boy, and that's pretty much a better title for it.
Boy.
Yeah, he says boy a lot.
I'm so tired. Oh, okay. I'm gonna put it on easy. I'm gonna enjoy the sound because the sound is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. And also, you're all into that that mythology stuff too.
I mean, I love Norse mythology. Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they do a lot of. I mean, they really I know nothing about it, but I learned stuff about Norse mythology just playing it. It was fun in that regard too. And then actually got me. Speaking of resonance, like you're talking about with Wes Anderson's movie, like sometimes video games will kind of do the same thing, where you kind of want to learn more about where they're basing their world from and stuff like that. And it's pretty cool. Like I read up on Norse mythology's version of Odin, and like what he's up to, and their version of Thor and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Like it's a lot. It was a really cool. It's a cool game in that regard. It's not. Is it the best game of all time? No, but there's plenty to like about it. At least how I feel.
Well, I'll put it on easy and give it give it the old college try.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see what you think after you play it, and you get a holistic experience playing it and playing the game through just the sound design. Again, like all the games that you and I talk about, we've played. Nothing. That's the one I always put on the top of my list for sound design. It's so good, But yeah, it's its own little star that I don't think it gets enough credit, sadly. But yeah. But I know we've been going for a little bit here, and I think I'm actually in a pretty good spot. I'm kind of surprised.
Right, well, that was perfect then. Okay.
Yeah, but so we got the push. So Leon pushes Calamity out of the way in this shot, and I'll update the art here. You know, who knows, next week, whatever. But we'll go into scene 14, and you'll see that
Nice.
she just lands and gets her oof in, and we reveal her.
My only comment is she looks smiled, like she's happy. She's not surprised.
Yeah, maybe I should check. It's her frowny face mouth pack,
Yeah.
but maybe I can make a new mouth where I can actually let me cycle through this. Let's see. This is their neutral and or styled mouth pack, but I could probably try to make another pose. I think that's a good observation. I think what I could do is I could try to excuse me, try to push a mouth pose a little bit more extreme. So that's something I could do for maybe off stream.
Okay.
But yeah. Um
It's
other than
it's
that,
interesting when you're zoomed in, when it's a close up, she doesn't look
it
quite
works?
as happy. But it's just at distance, for whatever reason, it changes to happy in my mind. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. It could be as simple as just even tweaking this.
Right? Yeah, just bringing the frown edge of her mouth down a little
Yeah,
bit.
really pushing it even more. Yeah, I mean, I could do that. It could be, or I could, like I said, I could just make a whole new set of mouths, where a particular mouth just for that. Excuse me, for that particular pose. It's not that big of a deal. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah.
It's looking good. A lot of progress today, and I got my word count in for the week.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap it up there. As always, everybody, you can head over to calamityjane.rocks. That'll take you to our Patreon site. Please consider joining us on this adventure to make this cartoon a reality. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube and all the usual places. And we also have a Twitter, which is @JaneSalamander, where we do 3 tweet stories every week. Sometimes they're like there's a continuity. Sometimes it's just random thoughts from Calamity. Either way, check us out and look at all the fun, silly stuff that we do. And we'll see you next week. Same Calamity's time, same Calamity channel, right, James?
Yes, indeed, and we'll catch up next week.
All right. Good night, everybody. Stay safe out there.